My name is Jacek Matulewski and I'd like to present a study conducted jointly with my student Filip Kowalik on the impact of a limited field of view on depth perception. The experiment conducted by the student is directly related to the problem of depth underestimation in augmented reality goggles. The standard theory explaining how we judge the distance of objects is so-called depth cues theory. The graph shows the impact of individual cues depending on actual distance of object. Binocular vision is only relevant for close objects, while perspective shortening is crucial for more distant ones. Despite numerous cues, some of which also work in augmented reality and on other display devices, depth assessment is associated with an indispensable margin of error. In the case of AR, this is a significant depth underestimation, which is crucial when designing spatial user interfaces. Tapping or pressing virtual buttons, for example, does not make sense because we tend to tap them when they are too far away. Several factors are mentioned in the literature that can influence how well we judge the distance of objects. The influence of display technology is one of the most frequently studied. Other factors include the environment, whether indoors or outdoors, the inertia of heavy goggles, and the limitation of field of view. In this study, we focus precisely on the limitation of the field of view, excluding the influence of technology. We conducted the study using ordinary work goggles, to which we added shutters limiting the field of view. No electronics. We attempt to keep the experiment as simple as possible, making it, in fact, a classic experiment in perception. Why did we focus on this particular factor? This is due to the discussion in the literature. Experimental studies have shown that the field of view does not significantly affect the depth perception. Knapp and colleagues considered this discovery so important that they included it in the title of their paper. However, there are also studies showing that such an effect exists, for example, the work of Williamson. Of course, these two experiments differ in many parameters, which makes them difficult to compare, and this is why we decided to check whether a limited field of view affects depth perception, but excluding display devices from the equation. As mentioned, the literature does not settle this, but in our first hypothesis we assumed that such an effect exists. It is, the more limited field of view, the greater the depth estimation error is. The second hypothesis concerns the very effect of goggles placed on the head, even those without any electronics and weighing practically nothing. However, we assume that they are irrelevant. The third hypothesis stems from our previous experiment with AR goggles and states that the relative error in depth estimation depends on the actual distance of an object. Finally, in hypothesis 4, we assume that experience with AR goggles can improve the quality of depth estimation. The procedure was similar to other experiments of this type. The participant begins by completing forms, including an informed consent form. They then sat in a chair and closed their eyes. The researcher placed an object at a distance of 1 to 6 meters in front of the participant. The distance were randomized, and asked the participant to estimate its distance, verbally. Then he asks the participant to walk towards the object with his or her eyes closed, while removing the object from the path. The latter method of assessment is called blind walking and is commonly used to rule out errors in estimating distance in meters, which we are not very good at. We used work goggles with coverage ranging from 25 to 100% of the aperture diameter relative to the eyepiece height. As well as those without coverage, there were also trials without goggles. 30 students of Nicolaus Copernicus University participated in the study, with roughly half being men and the other half being women. The single study lasted just over half an hour. To verify the first hypothesis about the relationship between depth estimation error and the field of view limitation, we checked the correlation between these two variables for different object distances. There is neither a linear nor a monotonic relationship. As a result, we had to reject this hypothesis, concluding that the field of view limitation does not affect depth estimation. Just wearing goggles, and here we are talking exclusively about work goggles without any electronics, does not affect the estimation error. We compared measurements from trials with goggles with no aperture and those without goggles at all and found no statistically significant differences in estimation accuracy. This allowed us to confirm the second hypothesis. The magnitude of the error depends on the actual distance of the object, but only for blind walking measurements. The relative error decreases significantly with increasing distance for individual aperture sizes. This allows us to partially confirm hypothesis 3. However, this is only true for blind walking. Finally, we also rejected the fourth hypothesis. There is no relationship between estimation error and experience with AR technology. The same is also true for virtual reality goggles. Thank you very much. If you find these results interesting, I encourage you to contact me by email.